The council chamber was quieter than usual when Daniel Porter stood to present humanity's formal complaint. The attack on the Bright Morning had been verified by 3 independent sources. The evidence was clear. The Krelath Dominion had violated neutral space, destroyed a civilian vessel, and taken 47 humans as slaves. Daniel laid out the facts calmly, without emotion. He showed images of the destroyed ship, the distress signals that had gone unanswered, the final transmission from the captain begging for help that never came. When he finished, he looked around the chamber at the hundreds of faces watching him. "We ask the council to condemn this act of aggression," Daniel said. "We ask for sanctions against the Krelath Dominion. We ask for assistance in recovering our people." High Arbiter Kethsan rose slowly from his seat. His compound eyes studied Daniel with something that might have been curiosity or might have been amusement. "It was hard to tell with the Velthari. The council sympathizes with the human loss," Kethsan said, and his tone made it clear that he did not sympathize at all. "However, the Krelath Dominion operates outside our jurisdiction. The attack occurred in unclaimed space. There is nothing the council can do." Daniel did not blink. "Nothing?" "Nothing official," Kethsan confirmed. "The Dominion has existed for 800 years. They are traders in certain goods that some species find valuable. It is unfortunate that your people were caught in their operations, but this is the reality of the galaxy. The weak are taken, the strong survive." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Daniel noticed that even species who had seemed friendly to humanity were nodding their heads. This was how the galaxy worked. This was how it had always worked. "Then, humanity will handle this matter ourselves." Kethsan's mandibles clicked with genuine amusement now. "And how will you handle it, Ambassador? You have no warships in that sector. Your military is small, and as I said before, untested. The Krelath have a fleet of 60 vessels and control a dozen star systems. They have crushed species far more powerful than yours." Daniel smiled. It was the same warm, friendly smile he always wore, but something in it made the Morvathi delegate lean back in his seat. Something in it made the Velthari guards shift their weapons slightly. "We appreciate the council's candor," Daniel said. "We will take appropriate action." He sat down without another word. The council moved on to other business, and within an hour, the attack on the Bright Morning was forgotten. It was a small matter, really. 47 lives from a minor species, hardly worth remembering. On Earth, in a building with no windows and no name, a group of people gathered around a table covered with maps and reports. Admiral Victor Hayes sat at the head of the table, his white hair cut short and his blue eyes sharp despite his 70 years. He had fought in the border wars, the colony rebellions, and a dozen smaller conflicts that never made the history books. He knew what humans were capable of when they stopped being polite. 4 ships, he said, looking at the tactical display. "That is what we can get to the Dominion border in time. 4 ships against 60. Captain Ethan Brooks studied the display carefully. He was young for a ship commander, only 35, but he had earned his rank through skill and courage that impressed even the veterans. His ship, the Relentless, was a carrier vessel designed for long-range operations. It was fast, well-armed, and crewed by men and women who had volunteered, knowing they might never come home. 4 ships is enough," Ethan said. The room went quiet. Admiral Hayes looked at him with raised eyebrows. "Explain," the Admiral said. Ethan stood and walked to the display. He pointed at the Krelath home system, a cluster of planets surrounded by defense stations and patrol routes. "The Krelath have never fought humans," Ethan said. "They have studied us, but they do not understand us. They think we will fight the way every other species fights. Defensive formations, careful positioning, preservation of assets. And we will not fight that way," Admiral Hayes said. It was not a question. "No, sir. We will fight like humans. We will go straight at them, faster than they expect, harder than they can handle. We will not stop to count our losses. We will not retreat when the odds turn against us. We will keep coming until they break, or we do. Lieutenant Commander Samuel Grant, Ethan's executive officer, pulled up historical data on his tablet. The Kralath have conquered 12 species in the last 3 centuries. Every single one tried to defend their territory. Every single one was destroyed piece by piece. Nobody has ever attacked the Dominion directly. Because it would be suicide, someone said from the back of the room. Samuel shook his head. No, because every other species in this galaxy has survival instincts that tell them to run when the odds are bad. Humans have those instincts too. The difference is, we learned to ignore them a very long time ago. Admiral Hayes was silent for a long moment. He thought about his grandfather, who had charged machine gun positions in a war that happened before anyone in this room was born. He thought about his father, who had flown a damaged shuttle into an enemy station to save 300 colonists. He thought about every generation of humans who had done impossible things simply because giving up was not in their nature. You will lose people, the Admiral said finally. You will lose ships. The Council will condemn us. The galaxy will call us savages. Ethan Brooks met his eyes without flinching. 47 of our people are in chains right now, Admiral. They are being sold, tortured, broken. Every hour we wait is an hour they suffer. I would rather die trying to save them than live knowing I did nothing. The Admiral nodded slowly. Then you have your orders, Captain. Bring our people home. On New Virginia, Catherine Morrison watched the ships depart from orbit. The Relentless, the Defiance, the Iron Will, and the Last Light. 4 ships carrying 1,200 crew members into a battle that logic said they could not win. Her brother was out there somewhere, in a cell or a cage, waiting for rescue that might never come. Catherine had wanted to go herself, to lead the ground assault personally, but Admiral Hayes had refused. Her place was here, coordinating support and preparing for whatever came next. But Hayes had made her a promise. When the time came, when the fleet broke through the Kralath defenses, Catherine would be on the first shuttle down. She would find her brother with her own hands. Be safe, she whispered, as the ships disappeared into the darkness between stars. And make them pay. Across the galaxy, the Kralath Dominion continued its business without concern. Their scouts reported the human ships, of course, but the reports were met with laughter. 4 vessels against the mightiest slaver empire in the sector. It was not a threat. It was a joke. They kept laughing right up until the moment the humans arrived. And then the laughing stopped forever. The Kralath home system was called Dominion Prime by its rulers, and Hell's Gate by everyone else. It was a place of dark planets and dying suns, where slave ships came and went like shadows, and screams echoed through metal corridors. For 800 years, no enemy had dared to enter this space. The Kralath had grown comfortable in their power, confident that nothing could threaten them. Fleet Commander Vrathkal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Chain, watching the sensor displays with bored contempt. His scouts had reported 4 human ships approaching at high speed, refusing to respond to warnings or threats. Vrathkal had ordered a standard encirclement, the same formation that had crushed the Morvathi expedition 3 centuries ago, and broken the Velnari resistance 2 centuries before that. The humans are not changing course, his tactical officer reported, confusion evident in his voice. They are accelerating directly toward our center. Vrathkal bared his teeth in what passed for a smile among his people. Foolish. They are making this easy. All ships, close the trap, leave none alive. 60 Kralath warships moved into position, forming a sphere around the approaching human vessels. It was a perfect formation, designed to catch enemies who tried to flee and destroy those who tried to fight. Against 4 ships, it was massive overkill. On the bridge of the Relentless, Captain Ethan Brooks watched the enemy formation develop with calm interest. His crew moved around him with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their task with an intensity that would have frightened anyone who understood what it meant. "They are using the sphere," Lieutenant Commander Samuel Brandt reported from the tactical station. "Classic encirclement. They expect us to try to break through and run. Then they are going to be disappointed. All ships, attack pattern Omega. We go straight through the middle, and we do not stop for anything." The 4 human ships increased their speed to levels that should have torn them apart. They drove into the heart of the Krelath formation like arrows fired from a bow, weapons blazing in all directions. The enemy had expected them to choose a single point to break through. Instead, they attacked everything at once. The first Krelath ship to die was a cruiser called the Slave's Tears. It exploded under concentrated fire from the Relentless before its shields could fully activate. The second was a destroyer that tried to ram the Defiance and found itself cut in half by precision weapons fire. The third and fourth died within seconds of each other, as the human ships carved a path of destruction through the center of the formation. Vrothkal stared at his displays in disbelief. "This is impossible. They cannot sustain this level of aggression. Order all ships to concentrate fire on the lead vessel." 20 Krelath ships turned their weapons on the Relentless. The human carrier shuddered under the assault, its shields flickering and dying, its hull cracking open in a dozen places. Atmosphere vented into space. Fire erupted on multiple decks. The damage reports flooding the bridge were a litany of disaster. Ethan Brooks did not flinch. He had known this would happen. He had accepted it before he ever left Earth orbit. "Maintain course," he ordered. "All power to forward weapons." The Relentless kept coming. Even as pieces of it broke away and burned, even as crew members died at their stations, the ship kept coming. It drove deeper into the Krelath formation, destroying everything in its path, refusing to stop, refusing to die. The Krelath began to panic. They had never seen anything like this. Every species they had fought understood the basic rules of survival. When a ship was damaged, it retreated. When the odds were hopeless, it surrendered. These humans did neither. They kept attacking with the same ferocity, even as their ships fell apart around them. The battle lasted 11 hours. 11 hours of constant combat, of ships dying in fire and silence, of human crews fighting through injuries that should have killed them, and damage that should have crippled their vessels. The Iron Will was destroyed in the 3rd hour, taking 9 Krelath ships with it in a final explosion that lit up the system like a small sun. The last light went down in the 7th hour, its crew transmitting tactical data to their surviving comrades, even as their reactor went critical. By the end, only the Relentless and the Defiance remained. Both ships were barely functional, held together by desperate repairs and the refusal of their crews to accept defeat. Around them floated the wreckage of 43 Krelath warships, the largest military loss the Dominion had ever suffered. The remaining Krelath ships fled. They had seen enough. They wanted no more part of these humans who fought like demons and died with smiles on their faces. Commander Catherine Morrison arrived with the second wave, a transport ship carrying assault teams that had launched from New Virginia the moment the battle began. She had spent 11 hours listening to the combat reports, hearing ships die, wondering if she would arrive too late. She was not too late. The Krelath slave compound was located on the 3rd planet, a massive complex of cells and processing centers where beings from a dozen species were kept in chains. Catherine led her team through the outer defenses, which had been weakened by orbital strikes from the Relentless before it went silent. The Krelath guards they encountered were confused, terrified, unable to believe that anyone had actually attacked their homeworld. Catherine gave them one chance to surrender. Most of them took it. They threw down their weapons and begged for mercy, and Catherine accepted their surrender, because she was a professional, and because there would be time for justice later. The holding cells were deep underground, protected by blast doors and security systems that had been designed to keep slaves in, not attackers out. Catherine's team cut through them in minutes, their equipment slicing through metal like paper. They found the human captives in the lowest level, 47 people, alive but broken, their bodies covered in marks that showed what the Krelath had done to them during the weeks of their captivity. Catherine found her brother Timothy in a corner cell, thin and pale, his eyes empty until he saw her face. "Katie," he whispered, as if he could not believe she was real. "I told you I would come," she said, her voice steady, even as tears ran down her cheeks. "I told you I would always come." She helped him to his feet and led him toward the exit. Behind her, her team was freeing the others, carrying those who could not walk, comforting those who could not stop crying. One of the Krelath guards, the one who had been in charge of this level, made the mistake of smiling at Catherine as she passed. Perhaps he thought that showing submission would save him. Perhaps he did not understand what he had done. She stopped walking. She looked at the guard for a long moment, remembering the marks on her brother's body, remembering the screams she had heard in the intercepted transmissions. "New orders," she said quietly to her team. "No prisoners on this level." The guards stopped smiling. When the human ships departed from Krelath space, they left behind a single message broadcast on all frequencies. It said simply, "The 47 have been recovered. The debt is paid." The Krelath Dominion collapsed within a week. Their fleet was destroyed. Their reputation was shattered. The species they had enslaved for centuries rose up against their weakened masters. And the slaver empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 800 years ceased to exist. And across the stars, other species began to whisper about the humans. They whispered about the 4 ships that had challenged 60, about the crews that had refused to stop fighting, even as they died, about the cold fury in the eyes of the woman who had come to rescue her brother. They began to call humans by a new name. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Every seat was filled. Every delegate was present. For the first time in centuries, even the observers from the outer regions had traveled to the conclave station to hear what would happen next. Ambassador Daniel Porter stood at his usual position in the lower section of the chamber, his hands folded calmly before him. He wore the same formal jacket he always wore, and his expression was the same polite mask it had always been. Nothing about him suggested that anything unusual had happened. But everything had changed. High Arbiter Kethzan rose slowly from his seat. His compound eyes were fixed on Daniel with an intensity that made the other delegates uncomfortable. The great Velthari leader, who had mocked humanity for 50 years, looked somehow smaller than before. "The Council has received reports," Kethzan began, his voice carefully controlled. "Reports that human military forces attacked the Krelath Dominion. Reports that your species destroyed 43 warships and killed thousands of Krelath soldiers. Reports that you collapsed an empire that had existed for 800 years." Daniel nodded politely. "The reports are accurate." "Over 47 individuals," Kethzan continued, disbelief creeping into his voice. "You launched this attack. You sacrificed hundreds of your own people. You destroyed an entire stellar nation, all to recover 47 prisoners." "We recovered our people," Daniel said simply. "We eliminated a threat to future human travelers. Is there a problem with this?" The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates from 100 species talked over each other, their translators struggling to keep up with the flood of questions and accusations, and beneath it all, fear. Daniel waited patiently for the chaos to settle. A Morvathi philosopher named Subtle Current was the first to speak clearly. The water being leaned forward in its containment suit, its fluid body rippling with curiosity. "You lost 2 ships in that engagement," Subtle Current said. Over 300 of your crew members died. Your casualties were catastrophic by any military standard. And yet your forces continued fighting until the enemy was destroyed. Why? Daniel considered the question carefully. Every eye in the chamber was watching him now, and he understood that his answer would shape how the galaxy saw humanity for generations to come. Because they were our people, he said. Other species have lost people to the Kralath, Subtle Current pressed. The Morvathi lost thousands over the centuries. We never attacked the Dominion directly. The cost would have been too high. The cost of not attacking was higher. For us. Kethzan's mandibles clicked impatiently. This is madness. You cannot expect us to believe that your species values individual lives so much that you would sacrifice hundreds to save dozens. The mathematics make no sense. Daniel smiled, and several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. There was something in that smile now, something that had not been there before. Or perhaps it had always been there, hidden beneath the surface, and they were only now learning to see it. You want to know what humans are, Daniel said quietly. You have studied us for 50 years. You have analyzed our technology, our culture, our history. And you concluded that we are weak, that our smiles mean submission, that our patience means fear, that our preference for diplomacy means we cannot fight. He stepped away from his position and walked toward the center of the chamber. No one moved to stop him. You were wrong. Daniel turned slowly, meeting the eyes of delegates from every corner of the galaxy. On our world, humans were not the strongest creatures. We were not the fastest. We had no claws, no venom, no natural armor. We could not fly or breathe underwater or survive extreme temperatures. By every measure your scientists would use, we should have been prey. He paused, letting the words sink in. But every creature that was strong, every creature that was fast, every creature that had claws and venom and armor, is now either extinct or exists only because we allow it to exist. We killed them all. We hunted them to the edges of our world, and then we followed them there and finished the job. The chamber was absolutely silent now. Even the environmental system seemed to have grown quiet. Do you know how we did it? Daniel asked. We did it by being relentless. We are not the strongest or the fastest, but we never stop. When we chase prey, we chase it until it collapses from exhaustion. When something threatens our families, we hunt it until it is destroyed. This is what we are. This is what we have always been. He turned to face Kethzan directly. We are very good at pretending to be harmless. We prefer diplomacy. We genuinely want peace, but do not ever mistake our preference for peace as an inability to wage war. Do not mistake our smiles for weakness. Do not mistake our patience for acceptance. Patricia Wells watched from the gallery above. She had spent 20 years teaching humans to hide their true nature, to present a friendly face to the galaxy, to smooth over the rough edges of a species that had clawed its way to the stars through blood and fire. She had known this moment would come eventually, the moment when the mask would slip and the galaxy would see what lay beneath. She had hoped they would be ready for it. The Kralath attacked our people, Daniel continued. They put our civilians in chains, they hurt them, they broke them, and they thought we would do nothing because we are small and new and weak. They thought we would accept it because the mathematics did not favor us. His voice grew colder. They were wrong, and they paid for that mistake. Every species that has ever threatened humans has paid for that mistake. We do not calculate acceptable losses. We do not retreat because the odds are against us. We do not surrender because we are outnumbered. Daniel looked around the chamber one last time. We came to this galaxy with open hands and honest intentions. We wanted to be part of your community. We wanted to trade and learn and grow together. But understand this clearly. Every human you meet, every diplomat who smiles at you, every merchant who shakes your hand, carries within them the instincts of 100,000 years of survival. We are civilized because we choose to be civilized. We are peaceful because we choose to be peaceful. He let the silence stretch for a long moment. Do not make us choose otherwise. When Daniel returned to his position, no one spoke. The chamber remained silent for almost a full minute, an eternity in galactic politics. Finally, Quetzon rose again, and his voice was different now, stripped of its contempt and mockery. The Council will need time to consider the implications of these events, he said carefully. We will reconvene in 3 days to discuss humanity's future role in galactic affairs. We appreciate the Council's consideration. As he walked out of the chamber, he passed delegates who stepped aside to let him through. Some of them would not meet his eyes. Others stared at him with new understanding, seeing for the first time the predator that had always been there beneath the diplomatic smile. The mask was still in place, but now the galaxy knew it was a mask. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The destruction of the Krelef Dominion had sent shockwaves through every corner of civilized space. For the first time in living memory, species that had accepted the natural order of the strong preying on the weak began to question everything they knew. Dr. Marcus Cole, a human scientist who studied alien cultures, was invited to speak at the Galactic Scientific Assembly. It was an honor that no human had ever received before, and Marcus understood that his real purpose was not to educate but to explain. The galaxy wanted to understand what humans were, and they had finally started asking the right questions. The assembly hall was filled with the greatest minds from 100 worlds. They watched in silence as Marcus walked to the central platform, his simple appearance giving no hint of the predator within. You want to know why humans fight the way we do? Marcus began. You want to understand how a species that seems so friendly can become so terrifying when threatened. The answer lies in our evolution. He activated a display showing an ancient human hunting party pursuing a wounded animal across an open plain. On our homeworld, we developed a hunting technique that no other species in this galaxy has ever used. We call it persistence hunting. We would choose an animal, often one much faster and stronger than us, and we would chase it. Not for minutes or hours, but for days. We would follow it until it collapsed from exhaustion, until its body gave out from the endless pursuit. The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Most predators kill quickly because they must conserve energy. Humans are different. We can regulate our body temperature in ways that allow us to keep moving long after our prey has fallen. We evolved to be unstoppable, not because we are strong, but because we simply never quit. He changed the display to show images of human civilization throughout history. This trait shaped everything about us. When we domesticated animals, we did not do it through force alone. We made them love us. We formed bonds with creatures that should have been our enemies. We took wolves, one of the most dangerous predators on our world, and turned them into loyal companions. We did the same with horses, with elephants, with birds of prey. We are capable of extraordinary kindness and extraordinary violence, often toward the same target. A young Velthari scientist in the front row raised a manipulator arm. How do we know when humans are dangerous? Marcus smiled gently, and the scientist flinched despite herself. That is the problem, Marcus said. You usually do not. We are very good at hiding our true feelings. We learned long ago that revealing our intentions gave our enemies an advantage. So we smile when we are angry. We speak softly when we want to scream. We shake hands with beings we would happily destroy. By the time you know a human is dangerous, it is often too late. The Council voted to grant humanity full membership 3 days after Marcus gave his speech. It was not a gesture of welcome or respect. It was a recognition of reality. Humanity could no longer be ignored or dismissed. They had earned their place through blood and fire, and the galaxy had no choice but to accept them. Ambassador Daniel Porter accepted the honor with gracious words and humble gratitude. He thanked the council for their wisdom and spoke of a bright future of cooperation and mutual growth. His speech was perfect, diplomatic, exactly what the galaxy wanted to hear. Afterward, High Arbiter Ketsan approached him in a private corridor. The old Velfari moved slowly, his shell showing the weight of his centuries. "I underestimated your species," Ketsan said quietly. "I thought you were children playing at civilization. I was wrong." Daniel nodded. "Most species make that mistake. We encourage it." "Why?" Ketsan asked. "Why hide what you are? Why pretend to be weak when you are clearly so dangerous?" Daniel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than Ketsan had ever heard it. "Because what we are frightens us too," he admitted. "We have spent our entire history trying to be better than our instincts. The wars we have fought against each other make the Krelath conflict look like a minor disagreement. We have weapons that could turn planets into ash. We have the capacity for cruelty that would horrify even the worst slavers in the galaxy." He met Ketsan's compound eyes directly. The diplomacy, the smiles, the patience, these are not masks. They are who we want to be. We are trying every single day to be worthy of the civilization we have built. But beneath every diplomat, there is still an ape who learned to kill gods. We choose to offer handshakes instead of fists. We hope you continue to make that choice easy for us. Ketsan watched the human ambassador walk away, joining his colleagues with easy laughter and warm greetings. The mask was back in place, perfect and seamless. But now Ketsan understood that it was not really a mask at all. It was a choice, made fresh every moment, by a species that could just as easily choose violence. That knowledge would shape galactic politics for 1,000 years. On New Virginia, Commander Catherine Morrison stood at the memorial that had been built to honor the crew members who died in the Krelath operation. 300 names were carved into white stone. 300 people who had given their lives so that 47 could come home. Her brother Timothy stood beside her, thin and scarred, but growing stronger every day. The doctors said he would recover fully, given time. The psychological wounds would take longer to heal, but he was already talking about returning to his research, about continuing his work with alien plant life. "Was it worth it?" Timothy asked, looking at the names of the dead. Catherine did not answer for a long time. She thought about the battle, about the 11 hours of constant combat, about the ships that had been destroyed, and the people who would never see their families again. She thought about the choice that humanity had made, the choice to pay any price to protect its own. "They will never take another human," she said finally. "Not the Krelath, not anyone. The galaxy knows now what we are willing to do. No one will ever look at our people and see easy targets again." Timothy nodded slowly. "So yes?" Catherine looked at him, her eyes filled with a complex mix of grief and pride and something that might have been hope. "Yes," she said, "it was worth it." Above them the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the survivors of the Relentless and the Defiance were making their way home, their ships held together by emergency repairs and the sheer stubbornness of their crews. Somewhere among them, the galaxy was learning to see humanity in a new light. They were diplomats and scientists and teachers and dreamers. They were explorers who had reached out to the stars with wonder in their hearts. They were friendly and curious and genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation. They were also the descendants of hunters who had walked out of Africa and conquered an entire planet. They carried within them the instincts of apex predators, the relentless drive that had pushed their ancestors to chase prey across continents and fight wars that should have destroyed them. They had chosen to wear suits instead of war paint. They had chosen to build friendships instead of empires. They had chosen to smile instead of bare their teeth. But the choice was always theirs to make, and now the galaxy would never forget it. The shuttle descended slowly through the darkness of space toward the largest structure Ambassador Daniel Porter had ever seen. The Conclave Station was a massive ring of metal and light, spinning gently against the backdrop of 1,000,000 stars. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had met here to decide the fate of civilizations. Now, humanity wanted a seat at that table. Daniel adjusted his formal jacket and checked his reflection in the small mirror by his seat. He was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and calm brown eyes that rarely showed what he was thinking. This was his greatest strength. In the world of galactic politics, showing your true feelings was the fastest way to lose. His aide, a young woman named Patricia Wells, sat across from him, reviewing data on her tablet. She had spent 15 years studying alien cultures and knew more about galactic etiquette than anyone else on Earth. Her job was to make sure Daniel did not accidentally start a war by using the wrong hand gesture. "The Velthari delegation will try to embarrass you today," Patricia said, without looking up. "They have been blocking our trade requests for 2 years. High Arbiter Kethsan thinks humans are beneath his notice." Daniel smiled slightly. "Then we will have to change his mind." Patricia replied, "That's what worries me. The last ambassador who tried to change Kethsan's mind was sent home in disgrace. The Velthari do not forgive those who challenge them." The shuttle docked with a soft thump, and Daniel rose to his feet. He paused at the airlock and took a deep breath. Beyond this door was a chamber filled with beings who saw humanity as children playing at civilization. They had traveled between stars when humans were still living in caves. They had built empires while humans were learning to farm wheat. But Daniel knew something they did not. He knew what humans really were beneath their smiles and handshakes. He had read the history books, the ones that told of endless wars and incredible cruelty, but also of courage that defied all logic. Humans had crawled out of the mud and conquered their entire planet, not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they simply refused to give up. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of seats rose in circles around a central platform, each one filled with a representative from a different species. Daniel saw the Velthari in their senior positions, their insect-like bodies covered in shells that shimmered with green and gold. He saw the Morvathi, beings made of flowing water, contained in transparent suits. He saw the Krelath observers in the back, their reptilian faces watching everything with cold interest. Daniel walked to the human section, a small area near the bottom where new species were placed. It was meant to remind them of their low status. Daniel did not mind. He had learned long ago that the best position was often the one your enemies underestimated. High Arbiter Kethsan rose from his seat, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his people. He was old, even by Velthari standards. His shell faded to a dull bronze, but his compound eyes were sharp and cruel. "The Council recognizes the human delegation," Kethsan announced. "They have requested expansion rights into the neutral corridor for what they call trade purposes." Laughter rippled through the chamber, translated by the devices every delegate wore into sounds each species could understand. Daniel stood calmly. "We seek only peaceful commerce and mutual benefit for all species involved." "Peaceful commerce," Kethsan repeated, as if tasting something unpleasant. "Your species has been part of the galactic community for 50 years. In that time, you have shown nothing remarkable. Your technology is adequate, but not impressive. Your military is small and untested. Why should the Council grant you access to one of the most valuable trade routes in the galaxy?" Daniel kept his expression neutral. "Because we believe in cooperation. Because we want to contribute to the prosperity of all species. Because we come in peace. The laughter was louder this time. Daniel noticed that even the Morvathi, normally a philosophical people who avoided mockery, seemed amused. The human request is denied, Quetzon declared. Perhaps in another century, when your species has proven itself, we will reconsider. Daniel nodded politely and sat down. Patricia touched his arm, her face tight with frustration. That was humiliating, she whispered. That was expected, Daniel replied quietly. Patience is also a weapon. 8,000 light-years away, on a planet called New Virginia, Commander Catherine Morrison was having a very different kind of day. New Virginia was one of humanity's oldest colony worlds, a place of green forests and blue oceans that reminded the first settlers of the home they had left behind. Catherine had been born here, had grown up climbing the tall trees and swimming in the warm rivers. Now she commanded the Planetary Defense Force, a job that usually involved paperwork and training exercises. Today was different. She stood in her office, staring at a message on her screen. The words were simple, but they changed everything. A human transport vessel called the Bright Morning had been attacked in deep space. The attackers were Kralath, members of a slaver empire that operated beyond council jurisdiction. 47 human civilians had been taken, including a young teacher named Timothy Morrison. Catherine read the name 3 times before she believed it. Timothy was her younger brother. He had been traveling to a research station to study alien plant life. He had been so excited when he left, full of dreams about discoveries that would help humanity understand the galaxy better. Now he was a slave. Catherine sat down slowly. Her hands were steady, but something cold was spreading through her chest. She had spent her entire career preparing for a moment like this, hoping it would never come. The galaxy thought humans were weak. The galaxy thought humans would accept losses and move on. The galaxy was wrong. She picked up her communicator and began making calls. The first was to Earth Command. The second was to Admiral Victor Hayes, the most decorated combat officer in human history. The third was to a man named Samuel Grant, who had once told her that humans were wolves pretending to be sheep. The sheep costume is coming off, Catherine said when Samuel answered. Get your team ready. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Samuel's voice came back, calm and cold. About time. On the conclave station, Daniel Porter walked back to his quarters, through corridors filled with aliens who barely noticed him. He passed a group of Velthari, who did not bother to hide their contempt. He passed Kreleth merchants who looked at him the way a farmer looks at livestock. Daniel smiled at all of them. It was a friendly smile, warm and unthreatening. None of them saw what was behind it. His communicator buzzed with an encrypted message from Earth. He read it once, then deleted it. His smile did not change, but his eyes grew very still. They did not know it yet, but they had just awakened something that the galaxy had never seen. They had threatened human children, human families, human dreams. They had poked the sleeping predator. And now the predator was opening its eyes.